Hello, folks. Once again, I am recording this with seniors taking the word keys test next door. So if I'm a little quiet, that's why. I'm not monitoring the hallway or giving a test today, so I'm trying to get as much stuff done as I can. So that's why I'm recording two of these like this. Today we're going to be talking about sustainable agriculture. We've kind of talked about the doom and gloom of all the ways that large industrialized agriculture can negatively impact the environment and biodiversity and things like that. So this is kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. We'll be talking about the opposite of that, people or industries who choose to farm sustainably instead of using more harmful large-scale practices. So a little bit less depressing, hopefully. So some of the things we're going to dive into regarding how people can farm sustainably are ways that they provide resources. It maintains natural biodiversity, which is great. It helps build or retain disease resistance. They generally use natural fertilizers. A self-sustaining farm requires less energy from farmers. It enhances the quality of the soil instead of totally taking away the nutrients from the soil. It minimizes the use of non-renewable resources like fossil fuels. And it allows economic viability. So you can kind of see the difference between the two. On one hand, you've got the unsustainable, large-scale industrialized farming, where they're competing with nature, they disturb the soil, the monoculture, where they're only planting one type of crop over and over again and hurting the soil over time. And they're using reductionist practices. So over on the regenerative agriculture side, where regenerative obviously meaning like they're trying to regenerate, they're trying to work with nature instead of against it. They're working to protect the soil and plant different things with diversity. They're alternating their crops. They're making sure they're not destroying the soil content and the natural nutrients within the soil. And it's a more holistic meaning, just a more natural practice. So intercropping is basically, it's a method in which two or more crop species are planted in the same field at the same time to promote synergistic interaction. So I don't know if you're familiar with the term synergy, but it's just basically things working in sync together. So if you have two crops and one of them has the ability to really, really repel pests well and the other doesn't, then planting the one that repels pests around the other one is a great idea. It's a way to kind of balance, and maybe one of them uses a lot of nitrogen out of the soil, but the other one puts nitrogen into the soil. It's just kind of a great way to balance and make sure that you're being responsible with your practices. So that's intercropping. You've also got crop rotation. Also, this is a beautiful garden. I would die for that garden. That's amazing. So crop rotation, I'm sure you've heard about this before. It's a method in which crop species in a field are rotated from season to season. So maybe one year they've got their carrots down here, and then next year they're going to go here, and they just shift every single year. So that way you're not using the dirt for the same plants every single year and destroying the nutrient content of that particular patch of soil. So an example, legumes or beans are really good for returning nutrients to the soil. So if you look at this, within 3 years, each one of these three beds or like planter areas, each one of these three gets those beans at one point. So it is getting those nutrients that are being returned to the soil. You also got agroforestry, and this is going to be when you've got trees and vegetables planted in an alternating way throughout the garden or throughout your farmland. And the importance of this, we talked about erosion in that last one. And so because trees have much deeper roots, obviously trees have much deeper roots than these vegetables or other crops that we're growing, it helps to prevent erosion in these areas. kind of works as like a, what's the word? As a reinforcement for the soil. You also got contour plowing. And this is when plowing and harvesting are done parallel to the topographic contours of the land. So basically what that means is the land you're farming on will generally have natural contours in it, natural hills and valleys. And so contour plowing is just when you're working with the land and you're going to harvest parallel to those contours that already existed naturally. So you can kind of see, like, okay, there's a hill up here, and they're moving with it instead of fighting against it. Not a bunch of perfect rows. They're going in the direction that makes the most sense for the land. You've also got no-till agriculture. So basically, farmers aren't turning over the soil between seasons, and this reduces topsoil erosion by a lot. If you are constantly turning up that top layer of soil, plowing it up, then it loosens it a ton. It's able to dry out easier, and it will result in a lot more erosion. But if you're not tilling up the land, then it won't. Tilling is just, like I just said, it's the act of turning the soil between the seasons, and it does result in soil degradation and erosion. No-till agriculture, crop residues are left in the field between seasons, helping to reduce soil erosion, emission of CO2, and the amount of water needed. So basically, let's say if you're growing cotton, for example, and the season's already over and you've already harvested all of the cotton off of the plants, well, instead of with tilling, you would just tear out all those cotton plants and then leave bare dirt. But with no-till agriculture, you would just leave that cotton plant, leave it in the ground, and the roots would stay in the ground, the plant would stay there, and that would help secure that soil. Excuse me. That would help secure that soil, and those plants would continue to absorb CO2. So it's just a lot. It makes a lot more sense, if you ask me. So tilling, turning up the land, turning up the soil. That's a tiller right there. So slash and burn farming, we talked about this a little bit in Wednesday's lecture. This is the practice, or maybe it was Tuesdays. No, Mondays. Either way, we talked about this. It's just the practice of cutting down and burning tropical forests to clear land for planting crops and also for raising livestock. Because tropical rainforest soil is generally pretty low in nutrients, they have to find new land every few years. So this means that rainforests are being destroyed at a really high rate, and that's leading to higher CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. It does contribute directly to climate change, because not only are you using fossil fuels to tear down and burn these rainforests, you're also taking away something that reduces our CO2 in the atmosphere by a lot. The rainforest absorbs a lot of CO2. So it's very bad. So you can see examples of this here. Slashing and burning. Not great. Not to mention the amount of wildlife that gets displaced, the number of endangered species in these areas. And that is that. So once you have wrapped this up today and you've gone through with your notes, hopefully go ahead and look at the case study that's been posted. That will be due on Monday night, and it is about farming in outer space, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend. If you go out and do stuff for Halloween tomorrow night, make sure that you are safe and make good decisions, and I will talk to you guys on Monday.